from Ted, dealing with severe anxiety and depression leading to his divorce.
For the paperwork the lawyer sent?
No, hey. Got it right here. I'll look it all over, sign it, send it right back, I promise.
To the absolutely toxic relationship between Keely and Jamie, Ted Lasso has dealt with some pretty controversial topics throughout its 3 seasons, and it manages to do something that most shows rarely, if ever, get right. It deals with hard-hitting and important topics like mental health in a real and relatable way. Panic attacks have been a big part of the show since the beginning, and they add a lot of depth to what Ted is going through. You see, Lasso may be a happy-go-lucky guy most of the time, but he's also dealing with some serious anxiety issues, and the panic attacks he experiences are a real and raw portrayal of what it's like to live with anxiety. In the show, we see Ted go through some pretty intense attacks at the worst possible times. And while it may seem like these moments are just there to move the story along, they actually capture the randomness and unpredictability of panic attacks. Anyone who's ever experienced a panic attack knows that it can happen at any time, and for no apparent reason. The way Ted's panic attacks are portrayed on the show really captures that feeling of being completely out of control. But even though Ted's panic attacks can be intense and sometimes embarrassing, the show doesn't make fun of him or treat his anxiety as a joke. Instead, it treats his struggles with respect and empathy. Just look at how the show takes off. He's going through a divorce, and he's away from his son at the start of the season, which is really hard for him.
Can you see John, Paul, George, or Ringo? Will you take a picture, please?
Hey, you got it, big guy. Okay, hey, I better get a roll on here, all right?
Okay, and Mom wants to talk to you. Hold on.
Plus, he's dealing with a lot of negativity from football players, the media, and fans. But even though he's facing all of these challenges, Ted still manages to hold it together most of the time. He's a great coach. He inspires his players and staff, honest way. In one episode, for example, we see him lose his signature smile and show a wave of sadness that just hits so hard.
It's the only way you can truly help her be happy. Obviously, by her, I'm referring to Lady Football.
And that's what makes it such a great show. It isn't afraid to show that silver lining. There can be moments of joy and inspiration in life, even when things are tough. But the most controversial storyline came in season 2. It was a really emotional moment, and it showed us a side of the goofy and lovable character that we hadn't seen before. In the Man City episode, Ted's on a phone call with Dr. Sharon, and he decides to open up about his father's suicide. A really brave move on his part.
My father had killed himself when I was 16. That happened to me and to my mom.
I'm so sorry, Ted.
And it showed us that even someone as seemingly together as Ted can struggle with mental health issues. The therapy session that followed was really powerful. Ted talked about how he discovered his father's body on Friday the 13th, and it was a really heartbreaking moment. But it was also a moment of connection between Ted and Dr. Sharon. They had already been building a great doctor-patient relationship.
Are you okay?
I want to make an appointment.
But this was a huge step forward for them as friends too. I think it was really important for the show to go there, even though it must have been tough for the creators and writers. They must have known that fans who liked the show for its light and goofy comedy could have been put off by this. But it didn't feel like a cheap attempt to give us a better understanding of Ted's mental health issues on paper. It was something real and honest that wasn't sugar-coated for TV. You can see this theme throughout the show, actually. It's especially apparent in all the relationships in the show. Ted's relationship with Michelle also caused a great deal of controversy.
Michelle, there's something I could do or something I could say that would make you be happy. Just being with me, I'd do it. I'd do it in a nanosecond.
Their marriage didn't work out, and they got divorced. And it turns out that Ted's mental health played a big role in their relationship. See, he's always been a little bit closed off, and he's never been the type of person to open up about his feelings. That might have been okay at first, but over time, it became a bigger and bigger problem. Ted's refusal to open up made it difficult for Michelle to connect with him on a deeper level. She wanted to understand what was going on inside his head, but he just wouldn't let her in. Eventually, that lack of emotional intimacy took a toll on their marriage, and they grew apart. It's really sad because Ted and Michelle clearly loved each other, but sometimes love isn't enough to make a relationship work. You need communication, trust, and vulnerability too. And those were all things that Ted struggled with. These are all bittersweet stories, but I think it's important to show them in all their glory, especially the never-ending love triangle between Keely, Roy, and Jamie. Keely and Roy were definitely a fan-favorite couple, but their relationship wasn't exactly a fairy tale. In fact, it was pretty toxic. They fought all the time, and they were constantly pushing each other's buttons. And while some people might think that's just passion, it's actually not healthy at all. With Roy and Keely, there's always this underlying tension and hostility. Another big issue in their relationship is that they don't communicate well. They both had a lot of emotional baggage, but they didn't talk about it with each other. Instead, they just lashed out and made things worse. When they do try to talk about their feelings, it often ends in a big fight. Keely and Jamie, on the other hand, had a pretty rocky relationship from the start. It was definitely toxic, and here's why. First of all, Jamie was pretty disrespectful towards Keely throughout their relationship. He was always putting her down and treating her like she was less important than him, and even though he claimed to care about her, his actions didn't always reflect that. Another big issue in their relationship was that he wasn't very supportive of Keely's goals and dreams. He was more focused on his own success, and he didn't seem to care about how his actions affected her. And when she tried to assert herself and stand up for what she wanted, Jamie would often get defensive and angry. And let's not forget about how he immediately got it on with someone else just a day after being broken up with. Major red flag alert. Even though he tried to make up for it later on, the damage was already done. Now, why did people find all this so controversial? I mean, wasn't it all depicting the harsh realities of life pretty well? It was. But the cast just pushed the wrong buttons for some people. They all visited the White House to talk about mental health recently. Considering it's the show's biggest theme, it made sense for them to address it. But some fans found it to feel a bit too commercialized, and it didn't really do much to address the underlying issues that are causing people to struggle with mental health in the first place. One user on Twitter said that it feels like mental health has become this buzzword that everyone loves to talk about, especially by celebrities who are trying too hard to seem relatable. And I mean, sure, it's great that we're having these conversations and raising awareness about mental health, but fans argued that they had enough of that and wanted real change in the system. A White House visit from the Ted Lasso crew is really not going to move the needle on any of the changes the audience wants to see. And let's be real, do we really need to hear more from people like Jason Sudeikis about the importance of therapy? He's a literal millionaire, for crying out loud. Twitter comment sections exploded after that, and most people couldn't believe that a group of ultra-rich actors were telling everyone to go to therapy. Honestly, it sounds a bit Black Mirror-ish, don't you think? The cast was put on full blast on social media, and some said that it's time to focus on real solutions and not just put bandages on the problem. So yeah, talking about mental health and self-love is all good, but the Ted Lasso crew clearly didn't read the room and caused fans to lose their minds. Well, that's all for Ted Lasso's most controversial storyline yet.